welcome to the Error 404 podcast. This is Ariane, aka Luna, and I am here with Leah, aka Garbage.
Hello.
And today we're actually going to be talking about Leah's book, Shadows of Time, because it's a good book and you should read it. We were going to have a guest on today. Her name is Kate, and she actually helped Leah with the book, but unfortunately with COVID and everything going on, she was unable to make it. However, she did leave an amazing review for us to read, put her words out there for her.
So we're going to... in-depth review.
Yes,
spoiler-free, too.
Very, yes, spoiler-free, big thing, because I know I try, but I just get overexcited talking about this book because I'm a nerd. So, this one will be good, no spoilers. So today, Leah is actually going to be our guest, and by that, I mean a.k.a. L.N.Keeter.
Hello.
That is what she wrote this book under.
Thank you for having me on my show.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's so great to have you. You know, I've been waiting for the chance.
You know, what's so funny is, like, L.N.Keeter is such a different person because, like, and I don't mean, like, for me, I mean how people treat me, especially you. Because it's, like, the moment I put my reader glasses on, you're like, oh, I'm such a big fan. I love your book.
And then you take them off, I'm like, oh, it's you. Okay.
It's like, oh, crap, what was it? Have you ever seen those Batman parody videos where he's talking to Alfred on the roof?
Yes.
And he's
my God. Yes.
He's like, I'm not Bruce Wayne. I'm Batman. He's like, take off the mask, you're Bruce Wayne. He goes, who's this? Use a Batman voice. I mean, I'm Bruce Wayne. Who's this?
Yeah.
Your mask still on. Puts a mask on. I'm Batman. That's what it just feels like.
It does, actually. It's that for me.
No, better. The Two-Face episode with, like, Harvey Dent, and he's talking to Batman,
yes,
and he goes,
that.
Harvey, where's Two-Face? And he turns, and he goes, Two-Face, what have you done with Harvey? That's legit what you do to me when I put the glasses on and take them off.
Well, because I know there's two different personas, you know what I mean? It's almost like Hannah Montana's best friend, if you think about it. She puts the wig on, and she's like, oh, Hannah Bear, you know what I mean? And then she takes it off, and she's like, oh, hey, Miley, do you want to go to the mall? Like, I feel like that, you know? Yeah, actually, it's a good way to explain it. Anyways, totally off subject about Batman. And
that was like the only explanation
I know, but I thought
that a lot of people would get. You know,
I just want to say, though, real quick, that my favorite one is when he's doing I think it's Riddler, right? And he just goes, helicopters. And they're both like, helicopters. I don't know why, but that's one of my favorite ones. Okay, so what we're going to do first, I believe, is we're going to kind of read off of what Kate has said, and then kind of have the conversation in between, you know, typical thing. We're going to kind of banter with her, but not with her.
Yeah, so she wrote this because she knew she wouldn't be here, and she gave me the heads up Saturday, I think. Okay. And she was like, but I'm going to write this really good review, so it's like I'm there with you guys, but I'm not there. And she also, we're going to have a Q&A for me at the end, which I'm excited about and sweaty about. Ariane's got some questions. Kate wrote in some questions. And, yeah.
All right. So, I think because the fact you are the guest, do you want me to read what Kate said? So that way you can kind of respond to it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, let's do that.
Perfect. All right. So, L.N.Keeter, thank you for joining the show. I'm going to start reading some of what Kate had said. And anytime you want to jump in, please feel free, and then I'll continue on, okay?
All right, will do.
All right, so this is from Kate. She was editor, correct?
Yes, so little backstories that we met in college. I started writing this while I was in college before I flunked out, and she was... I think she was an English major, and she wanted to be an editor, so I asked her, hey, do you want to edit this book with me? Just, you know, because I got dyslexia, ADHD, you know, I can't really write as great as some people can, and so she was helping me along. She really developed my writing into what it is now, and I remember I wrote this on Google Docs, where, like, she can edit while I'm writing, and I remember one day I scrolled up to where she was, and I was like, hey, Kate, what's the spine of the book called? And there was just this, like, long pause as she just wrote, the spine? And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's kind of like a little bit of, like, how not smart I was, but no, she just helped kind of mold it, and then when she saw that I had the ability to write it, she kind of backed off. So she actually didn't know the ending of the book or half the chapter. She actually had to re-buy the book to be on this podcast, and like I said, she couldn't make it, so she wrote this review and yada yada.
All right, perfect. It's nice to get a little backstory on her, fill in for her.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start off. First, I want to say that this book sucked me right in from the very start. Now, sometimes I worry when books jump right into prologue mostly because a lot of the time it ends up being a whole lot of exposition that can usually mean one of two things. One, the author was lazy and didn't want to take the time to explain these details over time. Or two, the author didn't know how to write a cohesive storyline and thus has to result to info dumping. I must say that I very much agree with her. Yeah. This book didn't do either of these things. Instead, it does the complete opposite. When I first started reading this book, I was surprised at the amount of intrigue we get when we first enter the world. The book starts off with a very interesting set of questions that leaves the reader, me in this case, wondering just what the hell is happening. But instead of these questions being annoying, they leave you feeling fascinated. As the prologue progressed, you finally meet our main character, Shadow. Now, what I really like about Shadow is kind of the representing theme throughout the entire book. I like them because I honestly don't know anything about them. See, that's what's so unique about this book. The main character is a complete mystery, and through the entire novel's journey, you, right alongside Shadow, discover just who they really are, or rather, who they thought they were. And you know what, I have to agree, because even, we just said that the last time we recorded and started talking about the book, that, I enjoyed the reading because you grew with the character and you got to know them and make your own decisions along the way. So I completely agree with that.
And that was a big decision for me, was you see a lot of books, what she actually goes into is that you feel this book is going to be like other books, but then I throw that curve, and that's what people love about this book, is that it's not like other books. And the main thing is, a lot of books you get this mysterious character and then you learn who they are throughout the book. This book, I think the only time Shadow is aware of who they are is the prologue. But they never mention a name. They never mention family. They never mention friends. Just legit what they were doing. Which is, I think, only not even half a page. It's just them walking down the road and then this shit happens. They black out and then gone. And memory wipe is the first thing from their mind. They're just like, where am I? What is going on? What is happening? And, the reader kind of follows that too. They're like, what's going on? What is happening? And I never, throughout the whole book, you never find out who Shadow is as a person, and you do see that struggle. Because Shadow's like, well, what if I was a bad person? And I'm just trying to be good. But if I try to be good, won't that bad come back out? Or what if I was a good person, and now I'm a bad person? And it's just, you see this conflict, which is a good metaphor for a lot of people growing up, honestly.
No, it really is. No, you do actually bring up a very good point in that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so back to Kate's words. A very interesting narrative choice, and for that, this book is already elevated for me, and that's just from the start. As we get more deep into the novel, and especially chapters 0 through 3, we start to really see Shadow start to question the events that happen within the first chapter, and see them try to understand just why these mysterious powers have suddenly appeared, and what that means for them as well as the rest of the universe. We see this especially in Chapter 2, where there is a deep inner monologue that Shadow goes through when they try to figure out what the Ground Zero incident was, and just what exactly its effects had caused. This is where we discover that Shadow has somehow managed to contract a time-traveling ability. Pretty freaking cool. Though I do have to agree, that it's nice because you kind of just jump right into it, and you're along the ride with her, like we were talking about before, where you're just like, what the hell is happening? And then, so you figure it out with her. So, it is, to me, a very interesting way to start the book.
Oh, yeah. And everything's a mystery. The time travel thing's a mystery.
Yep.
I'm never going to explain that.
No, I don't want you to either,
the end of the book kind of touched up on how it happened, but I like the mystery of everything. I like that you could come up with your own theory, and it works, because there is no answer. Same with some abilities that Shadow gets from the future, like the sword and everything like that. You're just like, Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, no, I was thought you were going to keep talking. I apologize. But yes, no, I know what you mean. Yeah.
No, but yeah, it's just basically like, yeah. There's no, I give like a little bit of an answer and the rest is up to the reader. There's a lot of mysteries in this first book that is weird because it's not the type of mystery where you have, wait, that doesn't make sense. What is this? You just go with it. Because you're like, all right.
You're not trying to figure it out on your way. You're just like, there's too much going on. I'm sure it'll come out later on. We'll just do it together. Like, it's one of those. You're not sitting there. It's not like a whodunit, where the whole time you're like, oh, this person said, green, so now that must mean something. This, like, with this book, you're going with it, and you're just like, okay, so big explosion, and then this, then that,
or like this, when you're in English class, and like a writer wrote, the curtains were blue, and the teacher's like, oh, it reflects their depression and loneliness, and the author's like, no, the curtains were just fucking blue.
I'm just trying to set a fucking picture for you. Yeah. So in between this, you might hear me say, ow, I just want to take a quick side note because my kitten is attacking my foot and I'm wearing Converse that are low tops. Ooh. So he is very aggressive right now and it hurts. Moving on. About a quarter of the way into the chapter 2 is when we first see it in action. Shadow, after nearly 3 months of unsuccessful practicing and trying to get back to a time period, they're more comfortable. It seems to be stuck in the time period that would later be realized as the one Robin Hood is in. While at first I was a little skeptical of name brand hero, I remember from my childhood and how it could possibly be woven into a complicated time travel story. I kept an open mind and was pleasantly surprised. See, the interactions between Robin Hood and Shadow are interesting, but not because of the historical factors or that Robin Hood is a beloved character, even as small glimpses in other media productions is always a treat. But it's the way his story is woven together within Shadows. It isn't your typical run-of-the-mill interaction where a character is in danger and needs saving, and then all of a sudden a name-brand hero comes and rescues him. No, this is much more nuanced, and I think that's where I really started to appreciate this book. While the interaction with Robin Hood only lasts a chapter, I think it gives a really clear example of how the rest of the book is set up in terms of plot progression. Near the end of the second chapter, we see how delicate Shadow's time-traveling ability is and how easily it's triggered, which we found out later on is a massive setback and a great foreshadowing, pun, technique that the author uses for later on. Mm-hmm. When he did the Robin Hood thing, I was kind of sad because I wanted to stay there a little bit longer because I really liked how you wrote him. He was the typical Robin Hood, that you're used to, but he wasn't. You know what I mean? Like that, the attitude and that kind of like, I felt like he was better represented in your book. From what I've learned just being overseas, things like that. Robin Hood was kind of like
he was
egotistical, but not like, yeah, exactly. He was a douche. He was egotistical. But, like, in your book, you still like him. You know what I mean? He's that asshole that you're kind of like, man, you're a dick.
That's yeah, exactly. Or as how Europeans say it, he's a cunt with a heart.
Yeah.
No. I do like her comment on that, is that I didn't make him how Hollywood makes him or how you see him in every other book where he's like, aha, I'm here to save the day. He's literally just someone that shows up.
Or he's just trying to get laid.
Shut up. Or is no much stronger than Shadow, or isn't better, or whatever. He's got an ego, but he's not super, you know what I mean?
Right. And he's not the hero of the story.
Exactly. And he's very humanized in just the one chapter. Even though we do see him again, and once again you do see him very humanized, there's nothing really special about him. He's just a guy with a bow. That's it. But when I read her comment on that, I understood what she was saying was that it wasn't about him. It was literally about Shadow, and Robin just popped up, and still the attention wasn't on him. He was just there.
He was literally just, he was the fries to the cheeseburger, if you will. You know, like, he's a great compliment, but you don't really give a shit about the fries. That's not the point of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just
you care about the burger.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, Chapter 3, back to Kate's word. Chapter 3 is one of my favorites because it's where we're first introduced to our protagonist companion, Claire.
Woo.
Now, Claire is an interesting character. One might even rival she becomes later on a second protagonist, but we'll get there. in the fact that she is ahead of her time. When we're first introduced to Claire, we're brought into the 1930s, a time period where women had little rights and even smaller anatomy rights over themselves. Claire is a dedicated woman of science, and I think that is a really great character type that complements our main protagonist very well in the central fact that she shadows other half. What I mean by other half is that Shadow, for all intents and purposes, is a rough, around the edge kind of person. They're impulsive, free-spirited, and all-around adventurer, even in the circumstances are a little less than stellar with their untamed time-hopping abilities. This is where I think Claire is the perfect balance. Claire is, like I said earlier, a woman of science, which is incredibly rare to find within the time period, let alone someone so upfront and frankly proud of how hard she's had to work for. I think this is an interesting choice, but ultimately ends up complementing Shadow's presence because while Shadow is impulsive and adventurous, Claire is calculated and thoughtful. She tends to reel Shadow back with facts and asking important, thought-provoking questions that force Shadow to re-examine situations and consider an alternative, and sometimes, frankly, safer options.
Yeah.
And while we're talking, I completely 100% agree with her.
I thought she broke down Claire very, very well.
Yeah, no, and because I remember telling you in our last recording when I first read this, I said the same thing. And that's what's funny is Kate and I never actually spoke about this book, and it seems like we have a lot of the same opinions on this, that Claire is a very welcome addition, and, I'm not going to lie, at first I was kind of like, oh god, you know what I mean? And then, she really grew on me, and not only did she build Shadow, Shadow built her, and it just worked very, very well. And I like where you brought her in from, because it was more interesting to see someone not from our time period, but someone from before who was I think outside the box, and I like that about it. I thought it brought something to the book.
Exactly, and I do like how she mentions that she's basically a second protagonist, because I've never really thought about it that way. But now, as an author, looking back, I did kind of make Claire almost the second main character of the book. She's rivaling Shadow to almost where it's Claire's story, not Shadow's.
Yeah, it got to the point that should it happen, foreshadowing and all, if Claire were to take over the series, say something happened with Shadow or anything like that, and Claire took over the series, it wouldn't be weird. It would just be oh, okay. You know exactly. What I mean? It would be oh, this sucks, but, it's Claire, though, So, it actually works out, and in some parts, you actually start loving her more than the main character. And I actually like that, though, because every good show or book, you tend to do that, one character, you're man, I want to know more about her. I want a backstory on him. You know what I mean? Something like that. So yeah. I do agree with her, and I really enjoyed Claire.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so upon meeting the American frontier in Chapter 4, we are met with a few new characters that introduce us to the new world we've stepped into. What I think is particularly interesting about this chapter is that it's at a point that Claire starts to question the reality of the situation. She's thrown off and completely jarred by someone being shot and killed in front of her, and instead of shrugging it off, which is what we see a lot... Sorry, it just made me laugh because I know struggle, yeah. Which is what we see in a lot of other characters, is the different time period books on the market. I think it really speaks to her character that instead she's shell-shocked from the events. It's a very realistic aspect that the author chose to include, which I think really makes this novel feel more immersive. A lot of the times, authors don't take the time to really delve into the character's psyche, especially when things that are triggering or traumatic happen, and we often see these same characters shrug off instances that would otherwise be harmful or detrimental to a regular person's mental health. And I really do agree with her, because there's sometimes that Shadow's just kind of and you're just well, there's something else going on there, because, Claire reacts how you would think a normal person would, and then the other characters, that, she said exactly, they're just kind of yeah, whatever, and it's okay, well, are you okay?
Exactly, and I definitely want to add that, because it happened a lot during that time. So, I think definitely having the fact of people watching this happen like it was a show, and them get shot, and then all of a sudden people just go back to their normal day. And having Claire be that person, and then Claire being that person that you see is actually no, this isn't right, this isn't normal. Yeah, really shows a different culture shock too from different time periods.
Yeah, no, it does.
But also shows
you don't really
normality.
think about it either.
Yeah.
But you don't think about, like, you know, back in, like, you watch Western movies, you do whatever, and it's kind of like, well, it's Hollywood, you know, so you expect it. But, like, when you read about it and you put yourself in that perspective, you're kind of like, damn, dude, like, they really just be having a pint or even breakfast, someone gets shot in the street, and they're just like, well, there goes Bill, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, that's it. So it's definitely a different perspective to bring up, and it's nice to have someone there to kind of be like, this isn't okay, and you're like, wow, no, you're right, that's not okay, actually.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Another reason the next two chapters really stand out to me is that it's at this point that even Shadow begins to question their own morality, going so far as to blame themselves for taking Claire along and allowing her to see these painful events, even if the intent was never to harm her in the first place. I like that these issues are being brought up because it breathes life into the story that would otherwise feel flat if the trauma and seriousness wasn't taken into consideration and would remain a very stagnant story. Completely agree with that, too. Mm-hmm. Like, you bringing it up doesn't make it just, oh, here's some dead people, this chick from, you know, what, 1930s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, oh, here's all these people just thrown in here, and there you go. You know, it was very, like, again, working with the characters and building that person and building that character for you.
And you also kind of see Shadow as a mental point from here, too, because Shadow doesn't react either.
Right.
Shadow's like, legit, in the book, says to her, grow the fuck up. Like, this happens, you can't do anything about it, grow up. And, like, you basically see that mental interaction that you have to understand the reader, like, okay, what the fuck happened to Shadow to where she's numb at this point? And then
exactly.
You have Claire, who's innocent and pure and probably has never left her fucking town before, fucking just randomly time traveled, and then 5 minutes later saw someone get murdered and no one could blink an eye. So, and then she has, like, basically a panic attack. So
but it's not only, you know, you got to put in perspective, like you said, she's probably never left her town, right? That's how I see her because she's young. Then all of a sudden, she's time traveling. Then all of a sudden she sees someone killed. It's like, how mentally fucked are you from that? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, especially being that age and in that era. Like, right now in our time, I feel like it would be kind of like, oh shit. But it wouldn't be so big to us, you know?
Exactly.
Like, it would just kind of like, nah.
Yeah, and it really speaks to her character development later on, too, because later down the road, we do come to a situation where she does see a dead body, and she's not stricken by it. She's more, what happened? What can we do?
Yeah.
Like, you definitely see her grow.
Yeah,
for sure.
You see her get, like, mature with it. Yeah, that's sort of...
It's kind of crazy. You see her grow mentally, and you... so you start off with her at a low mental state, and you go with her while she grows mentally. And you start off with Shadow at a high mental state, and you start seeing Shadow kind of crumble to a low mental state. Right. So I tried making that almost as Claire slowly becomes the protagonist, essentially.
Right. Yeah, no, that's actually a great way to put that. Let's see here. When Billy is introduced, I think it gives our characters the much-needed levity to take them away from the more somber events that have already unfolded. Billy is a much-needed breath of fresh air for both of them, and while Claire is upset at the death and gore that happens during their time spent in the Wild West, I think that she still appreciates Billy's kindness and willingness to befriend such out-of-place strangers. Completely agree with that, too.
Yes.
I loved when Billy came into the story.
We are talking about Billy the Kid. Woo!
Yes, we are.
Which I watched 4 documentaries on, and took strenuous notes for hours and hours to make sure I got his character right. So that way, if like a Billy the Kid enthusiast read the book, they would be like, yup, this is how he would be.
Yeah, exactly. I just...
Oh, this is a chapter you don't like.
About. Man, all right.
The one you're afraid of.
Hey. I completely agree with her point. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. Excuse me. When we move on to the Island of Misfits, the novel definitely takes a more reflective tone. Claire and Shadow decide to explore the carnival, and it's here where Shadow admits to themselves of how lonely they've been traveling by themselves and that Claire is a welcome distraction. I love the bonding that happens in these next chapters because it's a healthy progression throughout the novel. We see that our protagonist is willing to let someone in, and even as Shadow is guarded against doing so originally, they start to let their walls come down so that the true friendship can blossom. while these deeper takes are going on, we still have some great action scenes. The Island of Misfits is shrouded in a strange vibe that both Shadow and Claire and Arian are immediately aware of, even if neither of them can put their finger on it at first. We get sneaks here and there of things that are not quite right, and by the time the 8th chapter comes to a close, our main characters have faced several near-death experiences and are more than happy to begin their new journey.
I'm sure you were too.
Same. I will add in, yes, I was. I kept flipping those pages, and I'm like, it's great writing, it's a great chapter, please fucking end.
I love horror, I love suspense, I love gore, so I really wanted to incorporate that, and the clown, and, I even writing for the clown, I was like, what would I be scared at if I saw it coming at me? And I wrote this clown that was just didn't take care of himself. He, oh my God, had patches all over him, and like, I don't know how to describe it. Not patches. But definitely, hang on, I could actually probably find it. The book's too far away. I'm too lazy. I was gonna find the description of him, and then the little girl, which I'm terrified of little girls covered in blood asking where their mommy was. I put that in there. Yeah. So it definitely tugged at some people's fears and a lot of what the fuck is happening.
I'm just letting in do some shit with Jello because I would have just thrown the book and be like, "Yep, great book."
And then the clown took out Jello,
and then Jello forced down, and I'd be like, "Fuck this book." Actually, while we're here, because I don't want to forget this question because it just came up, so I'm going to throw it in. So I know you just kind of explained it a little bit, but like for this chapter, did you do any research into like carnival phobias, or did you just kind of sit back and go like, "What am I scared of?" Like did you actually look into what might bother other people?
So it's weird. So I did look up a lot of the characters that are in there are real carnies. So like the tall skeleton man and like the bearded lady and the guy that was like 2 feet tall but could lift like 400 pounds. They were all real at one point. I think I gave them false names too, just to be safe. And then I looked up like abandoned amusement parks, try to get that aesthetic, and there were some whatever phobia you said that popped up, and one of them was clowns, ghosts, and little like dead children. Just kind of like you hear their voices or you see them in the reflection of a mirror. You turn around, they're not there. So yeah, a lot of that did come into play, but it was more the fact, what would I be scared if I was in a carnival and it was dark out and I was alone with a friend? What would scare the living shit out of me if I saw it? And that was it. And I just went with it.
But what's funny is like I'm not crazy about clowns, but I'm also not terrified. Like if we were in that situation and one came at me, I would punch him in the face with a baseball bat. But like for some reason in the book, it was just so funny because I feel like it was out of my control, and I just had to depend on Shadow and Claire, and I hated that because I had no control over the situation. And I'm like, just shoot him. I'm sure there's a gun somewhere. You know what I mean? And like there was decisions that they would make, and I'm like, or instead of doing all this, you could just run the fuck away. You know what I mean? And like, I had to sit there. Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just saying, like, and then you had to sit there and you had to go through it with them, and you're just like, fine, let's go on this together. Might as well, we're here, so let's just do it. But yeah, all right, good. I just didn't want to forget that question because, that was a good one, and I want to know. All right. Chapter 9 is where we get into the complex workings of how Shadow's time-hopping ability works. We meet Royce, a greaser in the late 80s, and this is where
it's actually late 50s. That was a mistype.
Okay, thank you. I was just sitting there thinking, I'm like, wait a minute, did I read that right? Mm-hmm. So a greaser in the late 50s, and this is where we find out that he actually knows both Shadow and Claire. He tells Shadow that, despite this being the first time they've met, Royce has actually met them before a few years prior. It's at this point that I find myself fascinated by this world, because from the beginning, I was expecting the timeline through this book to be linear, which was fine with me. The plot was progressing on its own at an entertaining rate. But this is where I had to stop myself from reading this book all the way through the night until the sun rose, which I later caved and ended up doing anyways. Same. I know exactly where she's coming from. I love the non-linear plotline that the author decided to include because as this chapter progressed, it was clear that this was a smart choice. Of course, with any kind of time-traveling ability, one would assume that the time hops wouldn't be progressive, but instead be all over the place, especially if your main character wasn't able to control it in the first place. This chapter is also filled with delicious drama that really fuels my more dramatic soul. We see that this is the first point in the novel where Claire and Shadow have a true argument that results in Claire storming off in anger. As emotions calm down, Shadow begins to realize the extent of what's been said, especially on their end, and heads off to find our missing Claire. After a brief tussle with some rivaling greasers, Claire and Shadow come to the reconciliation. I do want to mention that I was incredibly sad when we leave behind Royce. Even if... Sorry.
You're good.
Even if he's kind of a himbo, I do really like his character, and I'm sad when Shadow makes the final, but sensible decision to leave him behind. Alright.
Himbo.
Just stop there, because I just want to say, what a great word. Like, that's not what I use personally, but I agree with her completely, because even though he is just a douchebag, and I wanted to just, like, be in this book as a character and punch him, you're still kind of like, yeah, but you're a welcome addition. Mm-hmm. So, like, I completely agree with that, too. When you did this, what was your, I'm going to kind of ask you some questions as we go, because I don't want to forget any.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration for Royce? Like, did you base him off anyone?
Say I'm fucking right. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say I stole him.
You
stole him. Yup. So, my favorite movie, since I was a kid, that is horror, and is a definitely B movie now, but back then it was really good, is 13 Ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
And my favorite character was the greaser with the baseball bat that died from a drag race. His car rolled because someone cut his brakes, and he burned alive and got torn and became the Torn Prince. A little backstory. His name was Royce Clayton. So when I thought about Greaser, I thought about that character. So I stole the first name. I stole Royce, because it was a very popular name back then. And I did give him a James Dean ego. So he's kind of, the name is stolen from the movie 13 Ghosts, and that's where the inspiration came from. And kind of what he is, not modeled after, but more or less, inspiration-wise. And then he is definitely James Dean personality-driven.
Right. That I kind of figured as much, that was a little bit, but I know, how much you like him.
Yeah.
But, I was wondering, because I was like, it's definitely not solely based on him, so.
Yes, it was a mixture. Okay. It was definitely a mixture. And, of course, I am a greaser myself. I definitely got out of the greaser lifestyle, but you talk to me, greaser, I'm gonna talk back to you, greaser, you know what I mean?
Right, it's still there.
Yeah. And especially in upstate New York, the greaser community is small unless you know where to look. So like the drive-ins, huge culture there, you'll see them walking around all over. But yeah, so it basically came from multiple locations, but personality wise, definitely James Dean. Yeah. Okay,
no, that makes sense. All right. I didn't know the part about the 13 Ghosts, so that was interesting. Yeah. So I'm glad that's pretty cool. All right, when we get back to Claire's time period, Shadow is met with a sense of foreboding that I find is incredibly appropriate, especially since it seems that Claire does indeed want to go home at this point, and Shadow starts to feel that creep of abandonment. After a really nice heart-to-heart, Claire invites Shadow to join her and her family for Christmas. Let me say that it's here that I really started to love Claire. She's not only compassionate towards Shadow's darker feelings, but she's emotionally intelligent enough to see how much Shadow is struggling with the thought of letting her go. I thought this is a very powerful sentiment because even if Shadow is characterized as someone who has a tough outer shell, I think it really says something that beneath all of that, they are happy to make friends, and especially with someone as receptive as Claire. Chapter 11 is a roller coaster for sure. Cannot stress that enough. Breaking character, cannot stress that enough. When we first start this chapter, we're thrown into the middle of a hostage situation. By being forced to leave Claire behind, Shadow is carted off into a mystery time period and confronted with a clan of hooded figures. They start interrogating Shadow, asking where they got their powers and how long they've had them. It's here that us, along with Shadow, realize the warning from the crooked old woman comes into play, the Grimm that she was talking about. They are keepers of time, looking all over the vast time streams and making sure every one of them runs efficiently and smoothly as they are intended to. This is where we realize that Shadow is causing disturbances and curving the lines of time. Super cool, but naughty Shadow. Tisk, tisk. After escaping the Reapers and taking one of them along too, we're transported to ancient Egypt, where we meet Gabriella, the Reaper that Shadow had saved. Now, when we first meet Gabriella, I was skeptical. Me too. I was skeptical of her totally. Mostly because I miss Claire, and also because, hello, she's a Reaper. Reaper equal bad guy. Or so I thought. Gabriella explains the logistics of how the Reapers operate, and we come to see that she is in fact our Shadow's side. In this, we come to find out that Gabriella isn't a willing participant among the Reapers, and instead has been looking for a way out for a while and opportunized the escape with Shadow to do so. The Colossal Games begin with an exciting look into the future, as Shadow and Gabriella are transported to the year 6817. I'm going to say it like that so before I butcher it. So, is that BC?
No, it's future time, so no BC.
Okay, I was just making sure, because you know how sometimes Reddit will do that, you know what I mean? Like, to put that out there for everybody.
Definitely future. When reading it, you definitely realize it's the future, but it's the year 6817.
Yep. All right. Shadow is forced to enter the games in search of Gabriella's long-lost brother. And by the way, can I stop right there? I'm sorry, but I love that part when she gets forced into doing that. Essentially, it's so funny to me. I love that whole part.
Anyways, Shadow's just do I have to?
Yes.
But do I really?
Because you see her grow and everything, and then this part comes out, and she's just like, really? You know what I mean? I don't know why. It's just
her
so
foot
funny.
like a child. She's like, I don't want to.
Yeah, and that's how I figured it. You know, that's how I saw it. Where she was just like, I don't want to. Gabriella's long lost brother, and in hopes to not only find him but save him from an unknown terrible fate that will befall on him if he wins the games. Shadow is tasked with finding him and kicking him out of the competition, all the while trying to survive as well. Unfortunately, Shadow isn't able to successfully convince Theo not to participate in the games, and later finds out that he's been contractually bound to kill one of the other contestants. Thankfully, Shadow is able to intercede and therefore fulfill their end of the bargain with Gabriella. Whew, that was a lot. What a roller coaster on that one. Because as I'm reading this, I keep messing up, and I'm so sorry, but it's because I keep reading this, and then I start thinking about the book, and the part that she's talking about, so I start playing the book in my head. So I'm trying to read what she's saying, and then the book's coming out too. So yeah. I apologize.
No, you're good.
But that whole chapter to me was kind of refreshing too. That it was kind of futuristic, you know what I mean? We didn't meet past characters, or we didn't, it was just, I liked it, and I enjoyed it, and I thought it was a cool concept.
Nice.
Still don't know if I trust Gabriella, though. Let's see here. With that one, actually, I'll ask you that question, too. How did you decide to write about that? Was that something you've always wanted to write about, or did that just kind of happen and you went with it?
Kind of a bit of both. So it was always something I always wanted to write in the future, and just write this really cool, idealistic idea of what the future would be. And, the games is definitely kind of inspired by, a lot of game mechanics now. Well, definitely the first part. So they're, playing, kickball or dodgeball, in an air-compressed dome, to where it's no gravity, and you definitely see Shadow struggling, they are not able to fight this gravity or whatever, or no gravity I should say. So as everyone's a champion at this, Shadow's just kind of flailing around. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But that was inspired by Blitzball from Final Fantasy X. So I kind of took that a bit, took a little bit of parkour and some bits of soccer, and I kind of just made it into that.
Right.
But yeah, I thought that was a good twist, that you find out Thea was contracted by a mystery person who you never find out. So that's open to interpretation, especially towards the end of the book. And wait, what? You're here to kill someone? What the fuck? I'm
here to stop you from dying and from doing that.
To save you, and you're here to murder someone, and you could definitely see Shadow, like, do I just leave this asshole, or do I fulfill my end of the bargain?
You see it go in her head, like, you know what, screw it. Like, he kills himself, he kills the person, doesn't bother me any. You know? Like,
and it's definitely like a Hunger Games-ish. You know what I mean?
But a better version.
Yeah, but a better version.
But yeah, no, that's cool to know, because I always wondered, like, how you got to that. So I like doing this, because it's opening up questions for me, too.
There you go.
Chapter 15 is a sad reunion. Do we have to talk about this one?
Yes.
Damn it. We finally get back together with Claire, only to find out that it's been 7 years since we've last seen her. Shadow tries to reconnect with her, but is met with a certain hostility that puzzles Shadow. Claire informed Shadow that she had thought that Shadow had purposely left her behind, and that's why she had come to hate Shadow, even if the intention wasn't malicious. Thankfully, these feelings don't last long, and we finally have both our favorite characters back together again. Cue crowd cheering. I'd also like to mention that I got super upset right before Chapter 15 ended, because I honestly thought, right up until the last page and half this chapter, that Shadow was actually going to leave Claire behind. I kept screaming out the pages, literally, this was at 5 a.m., no kidding, to just take her along, goddammit. Thankfully, I got my wishes, because I was seriously going to riot. And same, Kate, same. I was so pissed. I remember when you gave me, to review it, you know, and see how it was going, things like that. The whole time, I'm just like, shit, man, like, come on, like, don't do this yet, you know, or, like, leave it out better, like, you know, give Claire a little bit more dignity, you know what I mean, like, something. I was like, so you made me, like, love her, and then you just drop her like that, and I was, like, having such a hard time with it, so.
I was actually sad writing this chapter, too, because Shadow was so excited when they realized where they are, to where the mother's, like, also drops a little mystery hint. She looks at Shadow and says, you? And no one fucking questions it. I got so excited when no one fucking questioned it. I
didn't know we were supposed to.
No one questioned it, that somehow Claire's mom knows Shadow.
I didn't say anything to you, but when we were reading it, when she just said that, I was like, wait, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, I need to figure, I don't have time for that.
The second book will reveal it all, but it's the biggest fucking twist that I can't wait to fucking write. Anyway,
now I'm excited for it then. Because, like, when I was reading, I was like, wait, what? And then, like, I'm like, I don't have time for this.
Because as you read this chapter, her mom is hostile towards Shadow, but she's...
Yeah. Like, very much so.
Oh my god, they're weed-whacking outside my window right now.
Oh! Because all of a sudden you start talking and you're like, what was that? And I'm like, I don't know.
Sorry, if you hear any, like, mechanical noises, they're weed-whacking outside my fucking window. I'm doing something. Thank you. Anyways...
Okay.
Anyways, sorry. But yeah, so she's, as you read the chapter, you're like, man, she's kind of a little, like, I don't know, not motherly to Shadow. And Shadow picks up on that as well. When she says, like, hello to Shadow, and she gives a warm smile. Even Shadow's like, that's a fake smile. And that Shadow doesn't feel that warmth. She feels like a weird foreboding sense. Like, she doesn't feel a motherly warmth. She feels like a... Why do I feel like she's going to put me in a cupboard and lock it?
Right, like, why is she waiting for me to close my eyes and stab me in my sleep?
Exactly. Kind of so, but anyways, what was really sad is not only that, but Shadow's so excited, bursts up the stairs because she knows where Claire's room is. Bursts into Claire's room, she just finds boxes. I like how I added that there was dust on the walls where pictures used to be. You know, there's a picture of Claire graduating high school or college, I think it was. And yeah, and there was the crumpled up picture of her and Shadow that Claire took during the carnival. And it's just crumpled up, ripped up, looks like it's been, like, opened up multiple times. And that Claire is just not happy to see Shadow. And you can definitely feel Shadow's heart just drop instantly. And I wanted to make that clear that it hit Shadow like, oops. Like... You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But
all right, so I'm going to read this last paragraph, and then we'll take a quick break for the sponsors, and then continue on with it.
Okay, yeah, and then go into Q&A.
All right,
yeah.
Perfect. So they both decide that after spotting a Reaper, that their strength is in numbers, choosing to once again travel back and revisit some long-lost companions. Their first choice is finding Robin Hood, obviously. Upon reuniting with Robin and his merry men, the group is attacked by Reapers. After striking a deal for information on Gabriella, they are soon left to explain to Robin who the group of Reapers are and come to the decision to stick with them in order to protect each other. Both Claire and Shadow are grateful, but ultimately worried that the Merry Men might not be enough to outsmart the Reapers if they decide to bring more backup next time. With that one, I was happy that Robin was your first choice. You know what I mean? That, we got to go back and see Robin again, because although he wasn't, we were talking about before, although he's just the fries, I was excited and hoping that we got to revisit him again, because, I did like how you wrote him in, and I felt like him and Shadow actually had a really good interaction.
Yeah, and I definitely added that interaction more with the Merry Men. And when they first go back, you actually, they meet the Merry Men. And the Merry Men attack them. And, of course, it's nothing, hostile. It's just them trying to, question them. Be like, why the fuck are you here? And I think my favorite part is when Little John, who actually is this big dude, picks up Shadow. And, tries to... Because Shadow starts attacking people because they grab Claire. So Shadow's just fucking attacking people. And Little John picks up Shadow as this giant is just holding her. She's just kicking and flailing. And, I just thought that was a good kind of, image, almost. Was that this big dude just picks up Shadow like nothing. And Shadow's just, still trying to fight. What's that?
It humanizes her a little bit. It's still funny and everything else, but then you realize, she is possibly just a person, how I don't know how to say that, but you know what I mean? It does humanize her a little bit, and it brings you back to remember that this person is going through all this shit, and even though you're on the ride with her, you also forget, and you're kind of like, man, no wonder she's kind of a dick sometimes, and you know what I mean, and whatever, but it's I don't know, for some reason, that part right there, it just brought it into me for some reason, and and it was funny and everything, but I was just kind of oh, yeah. All right. Yeah, that's right. All right. So if you want, we'll go ahead and take a quick break so we can get a word from our sponsors.
Okay.
And we will come back, maybe read a little bit more, and then definitely do some Q&A. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Welcome back. We're here talking to L.N.Keeter,
hey,
and we are doing a review from Kate, who was supposed to be our guest today and unfortunately couldn't make it. So she wrote in for us, and it has been funny, and I completely agree with everything she said so far. So we're going to jump right back into it, and then get to some Q&A with the author.
Yeah.
All right. So after acquiring Royce and revisiting Billy one more time before his death, they traveled to the World Fair in 1893. Real quick, as soon as I saw a World Fair in this year, oh man, was I happy, because I knew exactly where you were going with it.
You know what's crazy? Is every time I meet someone new and I'm drinking PBR, I go, want to hear a fun fact about PBR? And every time Blake is like, God, fuck, no. No, stop. And I'm like, do you? And of course the person's like, yeah, sure, I'll bite. And I'm just like, crack the knuckles, and I'm like, all right. PBR was actually just Pabst, got the blue ribbon in the 1893 Chicago World Fair. Got the blue ribbon there, then became Pabst Blue Ribbon. And you know what else is amazing? What? Same fucking day that H.H. Holmes murdered everyone in that murder castle of his. You know that hotel that everyone got trapped in, gassed to death, and no one could figure it out? Yep, that's the same day. Soul Cadavers was actually real people. Isn't that crazy? Same day PBR was made. That's insane, right? And usually at the end of that story, they're like, how the fuck do you know that? And I'm like, because I line shit up, dummy.
Because I research things.
Because I love PBR, dumbass. But it's funny, every time I crack open a PBR and someone goes, oh, is that your favorite beer? I go, yeah, want to hear a fun fact? Blake, every time is rolling his eyes oh my god, is this the only fun fact you know? And I'm like, no, but this is the best one.
No, but it's the best one. Why wouldn't you want to know both of those things?
But every time I tell it, they go, huh, really? And I'm like, yup.
And then they sit there thinking about it, and they're just like, oh, Oh, man. All right.
That's crazy.
Right, so after a brief fight between Shadow and Claire, they part and Shadow goes out to drink for a while. Thankfully, Royce catches up with them, and together they figure out that the hotel Claire had booked for them is none other than the torture chamber of H.H. Holmes.
Real quick, I just want to put out that Shadow drinks PBR.
Of course she does. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to get some water.
No, you're
awful lot of reading I'm doing here. I also want to mention how fantastic of a wingman Royce is for Shadow, and how hard I laughed at him trying to hint at Claire, and it just completely going over Shadow's head because they're an obviously idiot.
Oblivious
idiot. Sorry, I was going back to it. I was gonna say, like, that's why I got, like, way out of control there, is because I couldn't stand him at first, and then he did grow on me, like I said, and, like, it was funny to me that whole time that was going on, you know, and Shadow's just kind of like, yeah, you know, and I'm just sitting there laughing. I'm like, oh my god, Shadow, really? Like, with how protective of Claire you are, you don't get this? So, like, I actually thought that was really funny, and I'm glad you did that.
Yeah, and it's crazy because a lot of people that read it ask me, like, are you trying to make Shadow and Claire a couple? And my answer all the time is no. It's literally it is that friendship that is kind of hinting at blossoming to be more, but also at the same time, it's a lot of resistance from the both of them, and like, hey, we're just friends, like all that fun stuff, and it's a very touchy subject, especially in the current age. I'm just gonna say, yeah, Shadow is oblivious. Definitely a lot of people that ask me if Claire and Shadow are supposed to become a thing. I definitely say no, because that's not really the path I'm taking, but again, it is a very touchy subject, especially in the current age, right. And it's kind of just like, you don't want them together, but you kind of do, and you definitely see how on both ends they have feelings for each other, but it's more of, like I said in the last podcast, it's more of just, I die for you, you die for me.
Right. It's like an ultimate best friend, sister level. Like, I honestly, personally did not want them together, and I didn't see it going that way. I always thought Shadow looked at Claire as almost like a sister or even daughter figure, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, she had more of that, like, protectiveness. You know what I mean? That's what I mean.
And like, they definitely have some, like, touching moments that come off as if, like, testing the waters, but
right.
It's definitely, it's more of that you push, I pull sort of thing, or I push, right. You pull. It will be touched up more later in the series, to where, do I think it would be a bad idea if it happened? No, but at the same time, I don't want that to be the center plot of the story, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want that to be what's taken away from
it. Exactly. Like, would it be cute, and would it make sense, and would you just be, like, rooting for them the entire time? Fuck yeah. But at the same time, I want you to root for it, but I don't want it to happen on page.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. You can kind of make it how you want. A lot of this time in this book, I noticed that you do give that definite answer here and there, but, like, if you really wanted to, as the reader, you could have them together in your head if that's what you really wanted. It doesn't need to be in print. Does that make sense? Like,
okay. Exactly. And it's basically, like I said, it is touched up on even more in the second book and throughout the book. But it's definitely one of those things where, how do I describe it? It's like when you're just looking at something you can't have because you don't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they feel on both sides. So I don't think I'll ever put them together. But it's definitely that relationship of, hey, we're friends. You die, I die. Like, I die for you, you die for me.
Right.
But let's not ruin it. You know what I mean? Like, let's not ruin what we have over something we don't know.
Exactly. And then, you know, because their friendship is, let's be honest, it's still extremely rocky. So them going into a relationship is just stupid, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So when people always ask me, like, oh, are they going to get together? I'm just like, it's up to interpretation. I mean, would I love it? I mean, yeah. Fuck yeah, I would. Because they're perfect. But, like, at the same time, it's like, they're not perfect. And
I mean, and it's a double-edged sword. Because they're not perfect, it's cute. Because they are perfect, it works. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like if they actually got together, it would. I don't want to say ruin, but I can't think of a better word for that. But you know what I mean?
Be distasteful.
Yeah,
I think it'd be better if I were to go down that road. I wouldn't label it. It would just be, they wouldn't label it. They wouldn't do anything. It'd just be like their friendship, but they have an understanding of their feelings. And that's it. Yeah, you know what I mean? But that's it. They're aware of it, and that's it. Like, nothing else.
Yeah,
they don't make a big deal.
Because that's how you get it as you're reading it anyways, and that's how you take it. That's
exactly.
There, but it's not really a touchable subject or a touchable thing, and it's kind of like that,
It's like it's out of reach for the reader, but if they wanted to fantasize it, they could. Can. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then they still have that friendship. You know what I mean? So I wrote it in a really particular way where if you did want it to happen, cool, you have the ability to do it. If you don't want it to happen, cool, you have the ability not to have it happen. So
Nope, I completely agree with that. Kate would also like to double mention this because I feel like I kind of got lost in the sauce recapping this book. But the titles for these chapters are not only spot on, but really well thought out and definitely set the vibe for what's about to come. H.H. Holmes ends up confining the protags in one of his torture chambers after a very gripping few pages of our group getting almost killed. I really thought Shadow was a goner at one point while they were in the furnace. They managed to kill H.H. and escape. This is an interesting note and one I didn't originally consider when I first was reading this chapter through the action parts, but Shadow notes that they killed H.H. before the timeline was supposed to have him die. An interesting point to think about, since the Reapers had said previously that Shadow was doing all sorts of things to mess around with the streamlined timeline, which got me thinking as well, what repercussions would Shadow face as a result of this one action? At the beginning of chapter 23, the gang is transported to Salem. God, I love this chapter. They're transported to Salem, where they find Gabriella on trial for being accused of witchcraft, which is simultaneously funny and fitting. Once they get Gabriella away from the villagers and emotions settle down, Gabriella and Shadow come to an understanding and truce, and honestly, I really like this gang all set up. While I was skeptical at first of Royce and Gabriella, I think they really fit in nicely with Shadow and Claire's dynamic, and even offering up a unique set of perspectives along the way. I do have to say, at the end of chapter 23, I thought Claire was a goner, and I got so upset. I think it's safe to say by now that she's my favorite character. Obviously, Shadow is a close second. I mean, come on, those one-liners are killer. So I can't tell you how hard I threw my book at the wall when Shadow managed to revive her. I literally, at 6 a.m., mind you, yelled. God, Kate and I should have talked more, because we just went through the same emotions at this.
Yeah. But what was funny is I think Shadow was the one that revived her. I think it was Royce.
Yeah, see, that's what I thought.
And the reason I did that was because I didn't want mouth-to-mouth contact of the two main characters.
Oh, yeah.
You thought had something, but didn't have something. I thought it would have pushed a wrong narrative.
Wait, in the original version that you were having us, didn't Shadow do it, and then you changed it?
Yeah, originally Shadow did the CPR, but I felt really weird about it, because I'm like, I don't know.
It's either that relationship thing or that like sister best friend thing where it's just like I'm trying to save my best friend, blah blah blah.
I thought it would be better that Royce did it.
Yeah,
and Shadow was there, kind of freaking out, like still having that touchy moment with Claire, like caressing her like forehead, like trying to be like, come back to me. And then she spits up the water, and like Shadow just holds on to her tight. I thought that was a lot better than Shadow doing the CPR.
Yeah, I did too. And
it made a better connection too.
Moment. Exactly. Yeah. Yep. No, I agree.
It definitely shows Shadow's anxiety of losing her.
Yep, and it showed this like very unarmored version of her. You know what I mean? Like her walls were down and it happened before, but this time around it felt deep. Mm-hmm. Like, does that make sense? Like, it felt like really deep this time with her, and like the way that she holds her, I feel like I really enjoyed that part. So I'm glad you did it that way.
Exactly. And Royce really was just like, I revived her. Okay, I'm going to fight these fucking pilgrims that are trying to kill us.
He's just like, you're safe, great, bye, and then just like
let Shadow and Claire have their moment. And of course, like even when Shadow travels with Claire, leaving the two behind, because Gabriella also has so the bargain that was the Shadow trying to save or rescue Gabriella's long lost brother and the Colossal Games of the future. The bargain was like, hey, you do this, I will give you this, basically like a manipulator that you can use, and it'll help you control your powers. And it's just it was like a project that the Reapers were working on. They could only jump within their time period. And it was basically like a theory that Gabriella had that, hey, if you put this on, you might be able to control what you do. And she definitely manipulated Shadow into stealing what made Shadow make this thing work. And now she can do it. Yeah. But yeah, so it's kind of like they have that ability now. Because when it was just Claire, Shadow, and Royce, and they were trying to go back to find Billy, you definitely saw Shadow struggling and almost blacking out and puking and almost dying. Because it was hard to travel with more than another person. So I thought that was a good touch that, you have your groups. Right. And it doesn't kill anyone, and everything's good to go. But basically, when Shadow travels away with Claire to a random time period just to get out of there, she's still holding on to Claire. Even though Claire's like, I'm all right, Shadow still like got that death grip because she almost lost her friend, who basically was everything.
Again, mind you, because, for, a second time? Third time at this point? Yeah,
third time, yeah.
Yeah. Alright, so as the book comes to its final conclusion, Shadow is left with two choices, and in a very Shadow-like fashion, decides to make an option 3. This leads to a cataclysmic event that leads the reader, aka me, to believe that Shadow was the cause of the events in the beginning of the book, making it a paradoxical event entirely. This is just my speculation, but again, it would make a roundabout sense. We are left with the final pages of Shadow's scattered thoughts, and then we fade, as Shadow says, into darkness. I have to say, this book definitely took me on a roller coaster. Hey, that sounds familiar. Yeah. I was up and down and all over with how I felt, and I think that makes for an exciting experience while reading, especially when you use it for I can't say that word.
Escapism.
Thank you. All in all, I really enjoyed this book, and I'm patiently waiting for the next in the series. I do want to give credit to the author because this must have been done a hell of a lot of research with all of the different time periods and people in history. Very impressive, and the work definitely shows. My last and final thoughts are melancholy, honestly.
Melancholy.
Jesus, I'm sorry. Melancholy, honestly. I'm sad this book is over, and I really wish I was able to pick up the next one right away because now I have a book hangover. But hey, that means that it's made for a great story, and I just need to get back and reread it again.
Woo.
To go back and reread it again, sorry.
Yeah.
I got excited ending that.
Yeah, but she's not speculating wrong. The end ties into the beginning.
Yeah, and when you first see that, when you first start reading that, it was kind of the same thing. You sit there and you're just like, oh no, Shadow, what did you do? And then you're just like, oh no, the book's ending, oh no, what's it going to be in the second one? And that kind of leads into more and more questions, and it gets you thinking,
yes. I will say this, because I can't spoil the end of the book, but I will say this nice tidbit. In the beginning of the book, you see one blinding light, and then when you see that Shadow's the cause of the beginning, you see more than one blinding light. So that wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
So it leads to a lot of speculation. Yeah. Of holy shit, is Shadow the only one? And then that kind of leads into the second book. And of course, what happens to Shadow, rip, leads also to the second book. Shadow's not dead. I don't take that rip the wrong way. Yeah. But something tragic happens. And Shadow's stuck in the worst place possible.
But that's what I was, when you're talking about the lights and all that, and I was sitting there oh man, the first thing I thought was okay, well, what did Shadow do? And then you're like, wait a minute, is she being played? Is there others that are being played right now? And is there a purpose for all this? So it makes you really start thinking, and you're just like, okay, where's the second book? I need to know now. You know, I need all of my answers answered. I need to see more about these characters and all that.
And Kate didn't know that I was writing the second book currently. So when she was like, I read that last thing, I was like, oh man, does she not know there's a second one? So then I told her, and she goes, oh my god! She got wicked excited. But yeah, and I know you had a sneak peek at a chapter or two.
Yes.
Yes, and you are super excited.
I'm super excited.
Yep.
And I'm just like, okay, so I remember finishing it, and I'm just like, well, where's the rest? And, like, I feel so bad when I do that, because I'm not, like, meaning it to be greedy or rude. It's more just like, okay, well
that chapter I showed you
more.
took hours to piece together, because you have, in this chapter, you have two people that are meeting from different time periods, not too far off, but far enough. I think it's like 5-10 years, but it's far enough. And they're two characters you never thought would interact, because they never have. They're from different continents, but it's just like they meet and it works. It fits. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it definitely gives you like a kind of excited rush for the second book. You're like, oh my god, what? Like,
because it's new things too. That like it still has the feel of the first one in your writing and stuff like that. You know, like sometimes when you get a second book, it's kind of like they're trying harder. So it kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel the same anymore. But like even just reading that, it felt the same, but I was getting, how to explain it, like just a new character, a new world opened up, I guess, is what I want to say. I'm trying not to say anything to spoil it too, so I'm like really at a loss of words.
Obviously, Claire is back with Shadow in this chapter. Yep. This chapter takes place halfway through the book. And, you know, you do, again, get that kind of speculation of their relationship. Because Claire is like, oh, I'm going to do this. She's, like, super egotistical. She's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to push their buttons. And, like, Shadow's like, don't do that. You're going to get yourself killed. Are you kidding me? Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I can't lose. Don't do that. Please, stop it. Stop it. And then Claire opens her mouth, and Claire's just, you've seen The Office, right?
Yeah.
You know the part where, like, Toby's leaving, and Holly comes in to be HR? And Holly asks Toby, like, what he would change about Dunder Mifflin, and Michael hides his face behind his hands, starts making faces at him, like, I'll kill you. And I think that's literally Shadow during, like, what's going on in this chapter to Claire. Claire's just pushing buttons, and Shadow's like, I'll fucking kill you. Stop. Like, stop it.
Yeah, like, no, I can totally see that.
But, like, you have that relationship of Shadow's super worried, and at the same time, they're like, I will fucking kill you. Don't do this. I will fucking kill you. Like, I'll do it. Like, but yeah.
No, I can totally feel that. I get that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to change it as much. I've had the plot points nailed from the beginning of writing this book and how the book is going to end, how every book itself is going to end, not just the series. And like I said, it's definitely, I think we mentioned this with Terrell on the third podcast, I think it was, where, you know, it's easy to have the beginning, it's easy to have the end. The middle is hard because it's like you have to get from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E. And yeah, so it's just like pretty hard, but I think that's the most fun part is because you have freedom. And I don't want to change it too much, but at the same time, I do want a little bit of change because it's thrilling.
Yeah, like the little bit of change is good, but you also don't want to be one of those freaking authors or have that book that it's like, I don't know, all of a freaking sudden, like, everything is just different, the characters are different, like, everything's different, the writing style's different, and it's kind of like, what the fuck just happened? Like, you know, and, like, you kind of, yes, that's what I was going for. But it's kind of like you fall out, because you fall out with the characters, because they're not the same character, the writing's not the same, so it's hard to stick with it, and you brought up a great example. Game of Thrones is a good example of that.
The show.
And,
book. Show.
Yeah, the show. Fuck the show. But yeah. All right, well, how about I get to some of these questions, because these are questions from Kate, and I actually want to hear a lot of these as well.
Okay.
So, are you ready to be interviewed, L.N.Keeter?
I am. I know, so kind of drill during the review, but yes.
Yes. All right. So, when the hell is the next book coming out? Sorry, I got
2024. Hopefully.
You just made up a year, didn't you?
Yeah. I'm hoping. I'm trying to limit that. I'm making an outline now. So instead of trying to write the book in a linear fashion, I'm just writing chapters that come to my mind and then just copy and pasting them like as I go along. So hopefully it'll go a lot quicker than 5 years. But
all right, next year I'll be reading this. All right, so what was your process with coming up with the original story idea?
My original process. Well, I was bored. I was tired. I was in Japan at the time, actually, and we just visited Nagasaki, and there was this story of how the bomb went off, the atomic bomb, and of course, people got burned alive, and then some people just got, radiation poisoning, but some towns were, devastated. There was a short story from a real person that I read that their brother, they were only, 5 or 6, and they were, twins. Their brother was trapped underneath a metal pillar that was, molten hot, and their mother lifted the pillar with her shoulder so her kid could get out, but it sliced right down her diagonally, instantly killing her. And, the story went on, and, I was just really moved by that story that I just wrote a short story. I just wrote the short story, which turned out to be the prologue of Shadows of Time. And that is what inspired the daughter being trapped under the stone pillar and the old man calling Shadow over. And the prologue is saying, help me lift this. That was definitely a short story. So, the devastation, the ash, everything about the prologue was based off Nagasaki. Okay. And it just kind of spiraled. It brings it together. Yeah, and it just kind of from there, I was just kind of I've always wanted to write a time travel book, but didn't know how to start it. And this was definitely this is it. This is how I start it. And it just kind of was okay, what do I do? And it just kind of went from there. And that's why it took 5 years, because I was just trying to make sure that it wasn't rushed, it wasn't cheesy, it wasn't tacky, it was calculated, and it flowed, and it made sense. And honestly, it was worth it.
Yeah, no, it totally was.
Yeah.
Okay. What was your process like writing the novel?
Frustrating, annoying, infuriating.
Non-stop text from your best friend.
Yeah. No, it was weird. It had its highs, it had its lows. So there'd be some days, where I would know what I was writing, and then others where I think for a good 6 to 8 months I had writer's block, and I just couldn't, no matter what, go to it. I couldn't type anything. I couldn't even type one word to get the story flowing.
I remember you were talking about that with Terrell as well on our other part. Yeah, about how it's just insane that you have to just wait for something to spark it.
Yeah, so what I started doing was I started listening to instrumental music on Spotify, whether it was video game music or movie music, TV soundtracks, whatever. I would just listen to it in my car when you were working in Kingston, actually, and I would do the 2.5 hour drive. That's all I listened to. And then it was literally almost slammed on the brakes because one song hit, and I was like, and I instantly knew what I needed to write. And that kind of helps. The music kind of helped that, especially instrumental music, because there were no lyrics for me to get distracted with. It was just my imagination just going wild, and that definitely helped open up that writer's block and just definitely give me ideas.
The music moved you.
Yeah.
It gave you the
it gave me the inspiration, and, definitely even gave me thoughts for later chapters in different books of Shadows of Time, later. So, it definitely was oh, man, that's good, but I should probably do that later in the series, but how do I get there? And then that's how it all came together. So it was definitely infuriating, definitely frustrating, but I think it was a big necessary process to do. Because it made me a better writer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how did you decide on the structure of your writing?
So structure, like I said, I didn't want it to be tacky. I didn't want it to be cheesy. Or
a love story.
Or a love story, yes. I definitely wanted you to feel that there was something, but that wasn't the point.
Yeah.
So the structure was very delicate, I'll say. It was just very delicate. There were even times where I've written a chapter and been like, nope, that's too much. And then I just deleted it and then rewrote it. Deleted it, rewrote it. Yeah, so the original document that I have is much, much, much different than the official final document. Because I didn't want that structure to be damaged. So it was definitely walking a tightrope. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
And yeah, so and the structure, I think, is very free, I'll say. In a way where, like Kate said in her review, you could flip to the next page and not know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I hope that's what she was looking for in that question, but that's what I have.
So you did actually kind of talk about this a little bit, but how long did it take you to finish the entire book from the original planning of the ideas to plotting, actually publish? Oh my God, I can't say it. Jesus. Publishing. There we go.
I started it, I want to say, like 2013, 2014. And then I don't think I published it till 2019. So maybe longer than 5 years. But that was from the thought process and everything like that.
Right.
And definitely, researching and everything took time away from the book. But it was, again, a necessary process because...
But it was also for the book. So.
Exactly. So, I don't like reading books that just make up shit as they go along history-wise. Because it's history, It's not false or anything. The facts are right frickin' there. Right. So I wanted to make sure that I got those facts right. Even if they only made a 5-page, not even 2-page appearance, I wanted to make sure that they were right to the character. And especially people, because these people were real. Except for Robin Hood, I'm pretty sure. Who knows? But like, a lot of these people were real. And I wanted to, it was almost like if they could read the book, I wanted them to be like, yep, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah. Or I mean? Be like, yeah, she actually got it pretty spot on. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Yep. So, like, that was definitely hard and took a lot of time out of my life. So it was about like 5-6 years it took to write this book. The second book is obviously going a lot quicker because, I have the setup and everything. Now it's just getting from point A to point B.
Right.
It's definitely going to be longer than the first book. Yeah. But other than that, it's not going to take 5 years. Definitely not.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully not. So are there any works or media that inspired you along the way or inspired the original idea? Now, I know you kind of touched base on that a little bit, but, for the rest of the book, was there anything that really inspired you?
Well, definitely time travel shows. They would touch up on some stuff, and I would... especially like Doctor Who or Timeless. Yep. Those two shows were really good because Doctor Who had like the fun adventure aspect. But Timeless, which unfortunately got canceled after 2 seasons, and they ended it really well, knowing that they got canceled. But it's a great show. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. It's definitely more historically accurate. And more, you have the historian, and you have the soldier, and you have the guy that is only there because he knows how to control the time machine. And it's just like... I don't know. I wanted something in between Doctor Who and Timeless, to where it was historically accurate. You got actual historical facts, but you also got that fun adventure, like crazy roller coaster ride. But I didn't want to do what these shows did, which is just focus on the adventure. I wanted you to focus on the characters. So I took a little bit from there. Of course, like I said, music kind of want to help me along the way. And yeah, the original idea was just from Nagasaki, like I said before. It was just going to be a short story, and it evolved into something much greater. Yeah,
much, much greater. What was the hardest part about writing your novel?
The hardest part about writing the novel... Oof. There's a lot of hard parts. I think the hardest part was that I didn't want to butcher it, and I didn't want to rush it. So there'd be times where I'm like, just fucking write this. And then the other part of me was like, no, don't do that. Take your time, because you don't want to ruin the story. You don't want to ruin the flow.
Right.
So that was definitely the hardest part, is that I was becoming impatient. Especially after like 2-3 years. I was like, why the hell is this taking me so long? I should just give up and just throw something out there. But at the same time, I was like, but I want it to be good. I want it to be really, really, really good. So, yeah, I took my time. That was the hardest part, was patience, because as you know, I have none of it.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that I did.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, no, that's a great answer, though. It's nice to know, like to hear, that you did. Like, I knew that you struggled with it, but I don't think I got the full idea, basically. Mm-hmm. So what was the most fun part about writing the novel?
Oh, the the historical characters for sure.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Yeah. I mean,
doing the research on them and writing them.
The research sucked, but when I got down to writing them, it was really fun.
You got to bring them back to life.
Yeah. And I feel like I did them justice, especially Robin Hood, because he's more of a fictional character, so far we know. So I had a lot more freedom with him, and it was so fun writing Old English. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to make him do this, make him do that. Same with the other characters, like I did have some stuff that I couldn't do with them, because obviously they would never do it. But it was still kind of fun putting words in their mouth that sounded like them. You know what I mean?
Right. No, absolutely.
So I think I even enjoyed the ride most of the time.
Yeah.
So that was a fun part.
Yeah. So what was it like getting your first review for your story?
It felt really good, especially when it came from a asshole person who, if you ask something of, they give you their honest opinion and mostly try to hurt your feelings, and they didn't do that, which was you.
That was me. I knew who you were talking about. Yeah, I do actually.
You want to read it?
Sure. So it was very short and to the point. My title was, "This is the first published book from L.N. I certainly hope not the last." Riveting and detailed, taking you on a timeline adventure that brings you to some of the most popular areas in history. Character development is steady and makes sense with chapter. This book made me laugh out a few times, and there's one chapter I read as fast as possible because it creeps me out. Solid story, and I'll be waiting for the next one. Short and sweet and to the point.
Short and sweet to the point. But it definitely, if I was someone who saw this brand new book and I saw that review, I'd be like, damn, what is this book? You know what I mean? So it's really nice having that and not someone saying, fuck this book. You know, that's what I was definitely worried about. So, but it's nice having that nice, good review.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I meant it, you know what I mean? Yeah. I meant everything I was saying, and it was so funny that you were always like, oh, but you're such a dick. And I'm like, yeah, but this is yours, you know what I mean? This is your baby. Like, of course I'm going to be nice. Like, damn.
Well, even if it sucked, you would have told me, like, throw it away, trash it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would have been like, don't put this out. So how did it feel to finally be able to publish your book after writing it for so long?
Like a weight has come off my shoulders and then thrown back on, because as you know, when we lived together, I was calling multiple publishing agencies.
Yep.
And they would call me back and be like, oh, I'm so excited. I love this type of book, blah, blah, blah. And I told them the characters to me, and one girl was like, oh my god, I'm a huge historian. I love you to meet these characters. I'll call you back 3 months. Never fucking heard anything back.
Yeah.
And a lot of places that came back to me were asking for $1,000, $2,000, which, you know, when you look it up, a lot of places are asking, because they don't just publish your book, they broadcast your book. They call, like, morning shows to get you on to broadcast your book for them to sell it. They do this whole publicizing thing to make sure your book is seen and noticed. So you're basically paying them to do all the work for you.
Right, which isn't horrible.
And, you know, Lulu has it too, where if you pay them $1,000, you know, which I am planning to save up for, like, in the future. You know, after I get everything, like, my new apartment and my finances in order to where, like, I can just save up for that $1,000 and use it. They contact, you know, Netflix, they contact Good Morning America, you know, they contact all these people on my behalf to basically be like, hey, read this book. If you like it, have them on. We will pay you a portion of the $1,000 they gave us to have her on. And then if the show likes it, they pay me to come on the show. And, you know, so it's basically, I pay money to make more money.
Right, which is understandable. You gotta spend money to make money.
Exactly. And what's nice is that if I don't get any oomph back, they refund that $1,000.
Oh, shit.
Because
that's not bad at all.
I'm basically paying them $1,000 to make me famous.
Right.
Or make my book known to where people are buying it on the, like, occasion or regularly and stuff. People are talking about it. People are calling me. And it's just like, they're basically there to be my publicist. And if they don't do their job, I get my money back. So
yeah, that's not a bad deal, then.
It's not a bad deal, but I think it's definitely, the weight was put on when I had to self-publish it. And I came into all these roadblocks. I think I'm on, like, technically, it says the 2nd edition, but it's technically the 10th edition of the book. The final edition just got put out. It's all edited. It's fine. There's no grammatical errors. But that was another problem, too, is that, like... And this was before Grammarly came out. So when Grammarly finally came out, I posted my book on there, and they're like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. So I had anxiety. I was like, oh my god, this book is a disaster.
You're wrong.
Yeah, I had to fix everything, publicize it. Blake's coworker bought the book before the final edition was out, so I have another one for him on my behalf. That's actually not grammatically wrong. And yeah, but the print is finally, I remember when I first ordered the book, it was huge. And I was like, what the fuck is this? It looks like a binder.
Yeah, so I remember that.
So I had to fix that. Then I had to fix the font because the pages weren't printed properly. I had to make sure everything was perfect. And it took an extra, like, year.
Right.
But now it's done. It's good. I don't ever want to go through Lulu again. But but they've been wonderful to me. You know what I mean? They even gave me my first video interview where they asked me questions. That's on my Facebook page, which is just L.N.Keeter, Shadows of Time. And, yeah. So, I mean, it was definitely, when it first got published, panicky. But now that everything is done and settled, it's like a weight off my shoulders.
Right. No, it makes perfect sense, though.
Yeah.
All right. So I have 2 more questions for you, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Nothing going on today besides sleeping.
How have you grown as a writer after finishing your novel?
Oh, man, it's crazy. So I used to write fan fiction, but it wasn't a nerdy thing. It was more like I just liked writing, and I thought it was a good idea to kind of work on my writing, and that'd be the best idea because you write fan fiction and you have people commenting on that fan fiction like, oh, there was a mistake here, or you basically see who you are as a writer because they're like, oh man, this is so good, I love where you're going with this. And you know, I definitely say that if you want to try being a writer, write fan fiction first, publish it on like fanfiction.net or Wattpad or something, because people will get back to you and show you the kind of writer that you are. And some people who are writers will comment and be like, hey, try this instead. Oh, you accidentally misspelled this word. So definitely looking back, I want to bash my head into the window because it's just like so all over the place. There's no flow. Everything's just wrong. Like there's no good punctuation, or there's so many grammatical errors compared to now.
Learn from that.
Yes, compared to now, where like I can write and I know how to write. So one thing Kate helped me with was describing things. I would just say like, "Oh, Shadow and Claire sat at the bar in the Wild West. They had a drink," and that's what I would write. And she taught me to write the Shadow sat on the rickety chair having splinters go up her ass as she leaned against the wrecked wood counter. You know, like I would just describe like a shit ton more. I would describe the smell of the place, the feel of the place, the look of the place. So it felt like you were there. And definitely 5 years ago that wasn't my writing style. Now it is. I definitely went from a lazy writer to a more dedicated writer. So
I can definitely speak on the dedication part for sure.
Yes. So I definitely grew.
So my and it was actually interesting. I'm going to put this out real quick. I just want to say that it was interesting because in that time I even got to see you. You know what I mean? Grow as a writer, because you would give me one chapter and I'm like, yeah, man, but you know, maybe add this in, do this, you know, just a little bit here and there, nothing major at all. But then you started giving me chapters, and I was just like, all right, well, where's the next one? And you're kind of like, well, I need feedback. I'm like, there's no fucking feedback. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's 3 chapters. Give me fucking more. Like, what else do you want?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was very interesting to watch you grow as well. So I just want to say that. So my final question to you is, you kind of stated it in the last question I asked you, but what advice would you give to any aspiring authors?
Take your time. Be patient. If you love something, let it blossom. Don't force it, because you don't want to put out something that you love and not get that same interaction back because you didn't actually put that love into it. So if you put your love into your project and just be patient, take your time, and definitely put your whole heart into it, you're going to get that response back from your readers. And it definitely inspires you and influences you to keep on writing and keep on doing what you do. And yeah, don't force anything. Just let your imagination take its course. And yeah, just really don't force anything. Just let it come, because it's going to be better in the long run.
Yeah, that sounds like solid advice to me. And especially watching you go through it, I know exactly what you mean. So
yes, and
yeah,
always ask for opinions. Don't be afraid to talk to your friends and family. Ask them to read something and see if they like it. Don't be afraid of that opinion, because it's just going to make you better, no matter if it's criticism or not.
Yep. That's the one thing working with you on this, I'll say real quick, is like, you know, it was nice because I was kind of worried, because I know I can be kind of blunt. So I was very worried about when I said it. So I'd always try to be like, you know, well, how you wrote this line, it's, you know, confusing. Like, just try to give you an example. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like confusing, but maybe you should do this, or I don't really understand what you're talking about, so maybe you should do this. And even though that might seem just like, you know, pure and whatever, I always felt bad, like, saying that to you, because I was trying to make sure I didn't discourage you, but also trying to, like, light that fire. You know what I mean? Exactly. So you're just like, all right, here you go then, bitch. Here's a better example, you know? And
yes, so don't be afraid of that, because think about it this way. Would you rather put out a shitty book and get harsh criticism from people you don't know than to just put yourself out there, ask for test readers? I made a Facebook post and asked if someone wanted to test read my book, and I got like 6 people, and they all said wonderful things, but also had their own type of criticism. Yep. And would you rather have a stranger give it to you, or a friend, like an acquaintance, friend, close friend, whatever they are to you, and then put out a good book and get great reviews back? You know,
exactly.
So it's just like, you know, take your time, don't rush it. And if you need inspiration, don't be afraid to look in weird places. You know what I mean? I know we went on a road trip just to have me get inspiration, and then at the end of that road trip, I was like, no, I didn't really get any inspiration. But then when I got home, it was like, wait a minute. Yeah, so it comes from weird spots. You know, I can't tell how many times I've been talking to a coworker, and all of a sudden they say something. It's like a light goes on. I'm like, shut up. Stop talking.
Wait. Stop your words.
Stop. It's coming together. Shut your fucking mouth. Hang on. Like, it's weird. So don't, you know, be afraid to whip out a pen and paper while you're at work and just quickly jot plot points down. That's what I do.
Right.
I don't care who asks me. I'll be like, shush. Like, that's it. But yeah, just don't be afraid to put yourself out there, essentially, because it's going to be better for you, essentially, as an author in the long run.
All right, well, I think that is solid advice from someone who has definitely grown as a writer, and can't wait for your future work. Obviously, as you know, I'm very excited for not only the 2nd, 3rd, 20th book of this series, but other series coming forward. I just want to say, you know, thank you so much for, you know, sitting down and talking about your book. And it was nice to question you on some of this stuff, you know, because it brings a lot to light as well, as like a huge fan of the book. So it's kind of like nerding out right now, you know, where I'm just like, hey, I get to talk to you and I get to know this stuff. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, especially because I know you just got out of work a little while ago, and so did I. So the fact that you're exhausted and you took the time, it's just awesome. Yes. But yeah, so is there anything else you wanted to add before we go?
No, not really. I just I'm sad Kate couldn't be here, because I feel like we could have had a more in-depth conversation, but she does want to be on. So maybe next time she's on, we could just shoot the shit. But yeah, that's about it. This episode was really long. It was one of our longer ones, but you know, it kind of was necessary. You know, we wanted to break everything down, and I think we did it very, very well.
I think we did too.
And it was very weird being a guest on my show.
Yeah, right? How does it feel? All right, well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. I'm glad we got to talk about it, and I do hope we can do an episode with Kate, because I think that would be great. I didn't mean to rhyme.
Oh, man, you did it. All right.
Well, I get it.
Well, next episode, I'm going to try to get a guest on here. If not, we'll just shoot the shit. We'll just shoot it. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in this episode. I hope you liked learning a bit about my other half. The one with the glasses. I know Erin liked it because she's a huge, for some reason, fan of mine.
Yep. I sure am.
Yeah, to where I feel like if I was ever on a talk show or something, she wouldn't see me as broski. She'd see me as like, oh my god, that's L.N.Keeter.
Yeah, I'd be the one with the glitter sign screaming, and I have to get escorted out by people and be like, I'm her fan.
Yeah, I'm her favorite fan. They'd be like, who is that? I'm like, oh, she's actually my best friend. It's just when I put these glasses on, she turns into a whole nother fucking person. But
she can't tell the difference.
She's a little oblivious. It's like Superman. But anyways, yeah, so thank you for doing this episode. Guys, we post every single Thursday on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. You name it, we are there. Don't forget to follow where you're listening to. And yeah, that's about it. Hopefully next time we'll have a guest. If not, we'll shoot the shit.